Hello, my name is Tom, and I'm back talking about F1 Fantasy. We've got the Austrian Grand Prix sprint weekend this weekend, so plenty to talk about in this video. Let me give you a quick virtual contents page, if you like, of what I'm going to be discussing. I'm going to be talking about team selection, duh. I'm going to be talking about chip usage, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be using a chip this weekend. I'm tempted to use a chip. I'm not definitely going to be using one, but yeah. And then also want to have a think about the price changes, how that's going to affect the game, and also have a quick look back on the Canadian Grand Prix and my team selection decision making for that. And yes, there's quite a lot to get through in this one team selection video. So I'll see what we can do in this video. It might be a bit of a long one, but if you've got the patience to listen to me talking for ages, then let's go on with it. So, Canadian Grand Prix. Feels like a long time ago already. It only happened last week, but it feels like weeks ago already in my mind. But I tried something a bit different. I broke away from the template ever so slightly. The only real changes I made was Perez and Stroll out, Leclerc and Guan Yu Zhou in. And that's because both Stroll and particularly Perez just didn't instill me a confidence. Perez, again, had a poor race by Red Bull standards. Didn't qualify well. Raced okay. And basically pipped Leclerc in terms of points because he, on that final lap, he got that fastest lap plus 10 points. So in terms of fantasy, he outscored Leclerc, which is a bit frustrating for me because Leclerc did actually have a better race than him, but ended up getting fewer points, but that's just the way of the world. So yeah, I do think that the Ferraris do look a lot stronger. They just gave me more confidence last week, and I just wanted to try something different. Leclerc looked like he was going to be more competitive, less tyre degradation, and just in general better, and had quite decent strategy as well. In the race, at least in qualifying, not so sure. Leclerc missed out in Q3 off Q3, so that kind of bit me a little bit, but made up some points. So yeah, overall, I'm not completely unhappy with my score last week. I missed out on just a few points compared to the template, but the main thing is that I didn't go with George Russell. So George Russell was a huge temptation for me last week. I think it's fully justified, and I think a lot of you guys out there would have gone for George Russell. I think he looked like a great pick, and he probably would have been a great pick had he not, had to retire the car in the end. But having clipped that curb, sent him into the wall after seeing all the debris and the damage from that, I'm amazed he carried on. That shows some real strength from that Mercedes car. That he was able to continue, and the ultimate DNF was a brake issue. It wasn't even related to the damage picked up. So. Yeah, I do think that the Mercedes look strong, and unfortunately, anyone that picked George Russell would have been hit pretty hard by the price changes, got hit by a negative $500,000 drop, as well as scoring negative points. And on that basis, I feel like it's appropriate for all the George Russell owners out there, a moment of silence, please. Okay, and now with that business out of the way, moment of silence over with. Yeah, I feel for you, basically. I feel for you, George Russell owners, because it was close to being me in that situation. It's been me in that situation before. It's not nice, but I do think that George Russell going forward is still a good option. I think Mercedes will be better suited to Austria in terms of more high-speed corners, which we know the Mercedes enjoys. And the Mercedes were strong around Canada on a track that didn't particularly suit them, and they're going into Austria, and then after that Silverstone, which is going to be a track which really will suit them, and with upgrades coming. So Mercedes are definitely very much on my mind as to pick them, and I think an alternative this weekend again could be George Russell in that Perez slot if we don't have confidence Perez. However, I am probably going to go with Perez just because I'm a coward, and Perez, frustratingly, he's off form, but he still keeps bringing those fancy points. So it's like, as boring as it is, probably going to end up with Perez, aren't I? But I do think George Russell is still a fine option because I do think Mercedes will do well this coming weekend. However, if he does have another DNF or whatever, has a poor race, then we could see like a double down and maybe he drops like $1 million or something in price. But the truth is, we just don't know what's going on with the price changes at the moment. There was no announcement, as is kind of the industry standard of F1 fantasy developers. They don't tell us anything. They just do stuff randomly. I think on a positive note, I think it is a positive change. These changes are happening. It's just a shame they didn't tell us about it. Going forward, we need to kind of monitor the situation because there are quite big leaps and differences in prices going on here. So instead of the usual 0.1, 0.2 that we see the likes of Verstappen having that change, we can see people like Fernando Alonso jumping up $1 million. We've got George Russell obviously dropping that $500,000, Gasly and Stroll going up $500,000, Ocon as well. There's quite big significant changes. It seems a little bit random. It does seem very much based on the previous, on that particular race weekend. It's not based on some overall points per million target, which I kind of wish it was more based on, so we get better balanced pricing. However, I do feel like there is maybe some element of that, because the Aston Martins in particular really jumped up in price. When we look at Aston Martin as a constructor and Fernando Alonso jumping up 1 million, which is the most out of everyone, with the exception of Alex Albon, who also jumped up 1 million. After a fantastic race and driver of the day, etc., etc. So I do think that the Aston Martins, and sticking with the template, if we get rid of Guan Yu Zhou for a second and put in template himself, Mr. Template, Lance Stroll, sticking with a template. Oh, sorry, George, you're not part of the template. Perez is the template. There we go. There's the template. Sticking with a team like this is probably a safe thing to do, and there's uncertainty about the price changes. If you look at a team like this, look at everyone's prices. They've all gone up quite dramatically, with the exception maybe of Perez, Red Bull and Verstappen, just 0.2. But particularly the Aston Martins have jumped up quite a bit, and if they have another good race in Austria, could we see another big climb of like 1 million or maybe even more? Is it going to be one of those things where as drivers get better and better each week, like their prices go up even more? So maybe if Aston Martin do well again, they jump up 1.5 or 2 million, and if you don't have them, you're going to get suckered out of the game. Or is it purely based on just the last week's race? It's kind of hard to know at the moment. It's been hard to work that out because of the price changes being so minimal so far. But I do think that there's going to be more of a lack of variation in our teams, as people are scared and unsure of what to make of the price changes. And I think going forward, for at least Austria, I expect a lot of people to just stick with the template and cross their fingers and hope for some good points from that. So yeah, I do think that the template is going to be strong this weekend, and to be honest, I can't see much else other than the template this weekend, because I don't think Mercedes are quite there yet, although I do think they're going to be sort of hunting down the Red Bulls. Ferraris looks better in Canada, and I think Austria again, they should do quite well. They've got good straight line speed. They've shown good straight line speed throughout this season, and we know Austria has got some nice straights on it. And will tyre degradation be a bit more of an issue than Canada? Most likely it will be. However, I'm sorry if you can hear a baby crying in the background, by the way. It's just the way of life in my household at the moment. I do think that the Ferraris are potentially an option, so you could potentially drop down Perez again if you don't have faith in him. You could go Carlos Sainz if you wanted to, and that enables you to drop Stroll and go up to someone like Pierre Gasly if you wanted. Or if you've got the budget, go to Esteban Ocon, because he had a really good race here last weekend. I think he finished around P5, P6 and scored quite healthily last year. So Ocon's definitely an option if you want to try something a little bit different. I can see people doing something along these lines to try and break up the template a little bit. But I do think that this weekend it is maybe just a time to kind of play safe, play boring, and pick the template. And I hate advocating this, but it's kind of where we're at the moment. However, going into Silverstone the week after, I do think the Mercedes are definitely hot on the radar, and they could be a real strong alternative to get some Mercedes in our team for Silverstone. But that's just another week ahead, which we don't need to worry about for the time being. So let's just say I'm going to go with the template of a team like this. Guan Yu Zhou / Tsunoda, I'll pick from them. I do think that in terms of budget driver, it's very much based on overtakes this year. In terms of overtakes, like you've got Guan Yu Zhou and Tsunoda who are leading the way with like 40 odd overtakes. When you compare that to the amount of positions gained, it's around 20. In fact, let me have a look at the spreadsheet because I've got it down here. So yeah, in terms of overtakes, you can see Guan Yu Zhou 47, Magnussen 46, Tsunoda 39, Piastri 39. So overtakes scoring pretty well. If we switch up and sort this from positions gained instead of overtakes, switch that up to that, you can see Perez is an anomaly here because of the amount of bad qualifying he's had. So if we look at Tsunoda down, the top scorers are scoring sort of 20 or fewer points in terms of positions gained. The main bulk of points for these guys, the budget drivers, is coming from overtakes, and Tsunoda and Guan Yu Zhou are definitely top of the tables for that. So I think going forward, Guan Yu Zhou, Tsunoda definitely the best options. Albon looks kind of interesting, but now he's gone up randomly like 1 million. He's kind of out of the budget equation for a lot of people unless you already had him in Canada. And yeah, I think that the best option is just going to be Guan Yu Zhou or Tsunoda going forward in that slot. So that brings me on to chip usage. And chip usage this weekend, I do think there are a couple of different options, and I think the one I'm leaning to mostly, well, let's go for the options. The options are the triple DRS boost, which I think is probably going to be the favourite amongst most people, including myself. There's also the limitless chip, which enables you to pack out your teams with the most expensive drivers with no cost cap. And then there's also the autopilot chip. Now the autopilot chip I'm almost certainly not going to use. I'd much rather use that for a wet race down the line, where there's uncertainty about who's going to win, and maybe when there's a bit more competition between Red Bull and Mercedes, it's a bit more uncertain about who's going to win. Right now, Red Bull are pretty clear the best car, albeit that may be changing soon with Mercedes coming back stronger, Aston Martin bringing strong upgrades. Like at the moment, though, the truth is the Red Bull are still the strongest, and they'll be bringing their own upgrade as well. It's not like they're just standing still whilst everyone else is going to upgrade and overtake them. Like Red Bull are going to be bringing upgrades, and they're going to be improving. And right now, because of how strong Red Bull are, I think something like the autopilot chip is kind of off the table for me. Limitless, same sort of reasons as well, actually. I think it's just better suited to kind of a nice, safe sprint race further down the line. Dry sprint race, particularly something like Qatar springs to mind, where it's likely to be like nice and dry and kind of a safe track, and you can just pack out your team without too much worry. I think the hottest chip for this weekend is definitely going to be the triple DRS boost. I think a lot of people are going to be put on Max Verstappen this weekend, and then obviously whoever's in that second kind of premium slot, like whether it be Perez, Russell or Sainz, for example, is probably going to get the double DRS boost. Could also go to Fernando Alonso if you fancy Fernando Alonso, which is perfectly reasonable, I think, if you want to do that. So yeah, I do think that there's definitely high upside to putting the triple DRS boost on Max Verstappen this weekend. Like I say, we know Red Bull are still the strongest team. That may change in the future, so there might be more uncertainty about who's going to win the race. So whilst we're kind of certain that Max Verstappen should be winning the race, and it being a sprint weekend, so you get extra points for the sprint race itself, I think it's a good opportunity to use that triple DRS boost. However, there is a counter argument to this. That you could be using the triple DRS boost when there's grid penalties available. When we look at what happens when people don't qualify out of position, we look at Saudi Arabia, for example, where Max Verstappen, where did he qualify? 15th, and look at the positions gained 13, race overtakes 10. He got driver of the day because he sived through the field. Similar sort of thing with Perez in Australia, if you remember, scored 52 points. Again, he didn't qualify, even started off with a -5 for the weekend, but because he started at the back, he made his way through it again. Positions gained, overtake bonus, 52 points. On average, that's kind of more than what you'd expect from just a good solid sprint weekend potentially. So we could hold out for known grid penalties further down the line, or just random grid penalties that we know about before the deadline further along the season. For example, Max Verstappen takes some new engine components, ends up at the back of the grid, and then we expect him to just sive through the field and score loads of points. There's obviously no guarantee of that happening at all, so you're kind of gambling, by not using a triple DRS boost, you're kind of gambling this weekend on that engine penalty and grid penalty actually like happening. And also, again, although the Red Bull is going to be strong throughout the season, is it going to be strong enough? Again, I arc back to the fact that the Mercedes, Aston Martins, Ferraris are all looking a lot strong. Even the Alpines are all looking stronger and closer to Red Bull. So further down the season, is it going to be as easy for the likes of Verstappen to side through the field and finish on the podium from a P15, 20, whatever it is he starts from on the grid? Is it going to be so easy later on in the season? Is he going to be able to get all those overtake points, positions gained? Is he going to get driver of the day? Likelihood still makes me think, yes, that is definitely a possibility. But the truth of the matter is we don't know, and there's real uncertainty there. Yes, you could be patient, and it could really pay off you if you want to be patient and hold off for that sort of situation to arise, particularly if it happens on a sprint weekend. If you can combine the grid penalty on a sprint weekend, which may well happen, then you could be singing and dancing by the end of the weekend when you triple DRS boost someone like Max Verstappen, and just really get an absolute massive haul of points. However, that isn't necessarily going to happen. That's like the dream scenario, and it's not necessarily going to occur. It may well occur, but I think I'd rather deal with more known quantities. And right now, the known quantity is Red Bull are the best team. Max Verstappen is currently the best driver, and we know that going into this weekend. It's a sprint weekend. We know the Red Bull are strong around here. It's their home race. And Max Verstappen is it's almost like a home race for Max Verstappen, the amount of Dutch fans that turn up in the Austria for the Austria Grand Prix. I can't even get my words out anymore. So yeah, I do think that Max Verstappen is definitely the big favourite this weekend, and therefore I'm very much tempted just to put my chips in on like quite literally put my chip on Max Verstappen this weekend. But there's still food for thought on potentially holding out and being patient. And quite often, just being patient in fantasy games is the best way to play it. Not rushing into anything, playing boring, waiting for the perfect opportunity. We could be pulling the trigger slightly early on going for this triple DRS boost this weekend, but I think it's still a fairly safe bet. And even if you don't maximize the points, you're like, compared to waiting for the grid penalty further down the line, you're still securing what should be a nice haul of points, and you've got that security, that safety net, that kind of just comfortable comfort zone of Max Verstappen just going to get you through and get you a bunch of points this weekend, and then you can forget about the chip for the rest of the season. Whereas it's going to be on your mind for the rest of the season. I do think like I said, there is the possibility for bigger points further down the line, but just that security of big points this weekend is kind of making me lean towards using that chip. So yeah, it's quite an interesting one. I'll be interested to know what everyone else is thinking. I feel personally that a lot of people will be kind of in agreement with what I've just said, but I would be interested to hear people who are more wanting to hold out and look for the likes of the grid penalty, particularly in combination with a sprint weekend. Like how do you have how much confidence do you have that opportunity is going to arise, and are you going to have the confidence to get through this weekend with Max Verstappen likely to be heavily triple DRS boosted by a lot of engaged managers? How are you going to cope with that this weekend? Basically, how do you do it? Tell me your secret. But yeah, that's kind of my thinking going into this weekend. In terms of other chip usage, I'm probably not going to be using it this weekend. It's going to be DRS boost ×3 on Max Verstappen or nothing. So we'll see what happens come the deadline. And that kind of sums up my thoughts. As per usual, there won't be any more videos for me this week because of the nature of it being a sprint weekend, and I won't have time on Friday to put another video together. But you can always reach out to me on Twitter, on the YouTube comments, whatever. Let's have a bit of a conversation about what we're doing this weekend and going forward. What do you think about the price changes? Are they a good thing? Are they a bad thing? Personally, I think it's good that they're changing something, but it's not exactly what I would have in mind if they're going to do it. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts and feelings for now. Hopefully this video hasn't gone on for too long, but there we go. So I'm going to wrap it up now. Say thank you very much. Good luck this weekend. Have fun. Enjoy the nice sprint weekend. Should be good fun. And yeah, wish you all the best of luck. Bye bye.